Hi everyone, welcome to the Feminine Force Field. We're here again, Lisa and Caroline, to have a little chat uh, about life and trying to unpack our experiences and involve you in the conversation too. So, how are you, Lisa? Do you have a nice weekend?
Um, had a great weekend last weekend. It was a bit rainy, but I managed to sit around and so my son has just come back from a year-long trip around Australia. So, well, actually, he's on
Oh,
his way home. So I get to enjoy his company for 3 or 4 weeks now. And that's been really, really amazing, actually. And they're so chilled out, him and his wife, after traveling for like 10 months now. Very
oh,
tanned and just like really laid back and cool. It's really nice to have them in my home.
oh, that's amazing! And I got a little glimpse of them last night when we had a little chat, and I got to talk to them on Zoom for a second. Just gorgeous couple, yeah, amazing to be traveling around Australia like that. Seems to
Yeah.
be a common
Super
thing, and
brave,
actually,
isn't it? Really? At
yeah, it
that
really
age?
is.
Like, I don't think at that age I would have had that sort of bravery. And,
Yeah,
it's just fantastic, like, the experiences they've had and the way they look at life, and it's great. So good.
amazing. Yeah, it's fabulous. And actually, I was actually at weekend with my friend Sharon from Skerries that I went to college with, and herself and her husband, both Irish, but they met in Australia. They both went to Australia, and they were telling me about that, going in a camper van around, and but they worked in Sydney and Melbourne, but they met and then they went to New Zealand and Australia in a camper van and telling me about the story about all that. You know the way, so about 20 years ago as well. So yeah, so it's lovely. It kind of links in with what your son is doing. So it's a little bit links in with what we want to talk about today as well, where we're talking about, the question of like, why are you sitting on the sideline of your own life? Which is very appropriate to what you were talking about
Yes, it's true.
with your son, like, and kind of just sitting in this safe place that you feel, okay, it might be safe, but are you actually experiencing life in its fullest?
Yeah,
And how, and
yeah.
maybe why, start to open the question of why is that? Or is there more that we can be
Mm,
getting from our experience of life? And what is it in the way of that? So at least I know we had a little experience at the weekend that sparked this conversation off, and I'd love you to
mm,
have a just to talk about what maybe happened at the weekend that you
mm.
felt that experience, that emotional
Yeah,
kind of
well,
experience.
it's really interesting because, like, as you know, we tend to look at life in a way that life is informing me. So whatever's happening in my life, it's informing me of myself and what I need to look at in myself. And on the weekend, I was thinking to myself, so I had expectations on the weekend that weren't met, and I had a feeling around that. And what I realized was, like, when I actually sat and contemplated it, I didn't feel like I'd failed. Like, I had all this rhetoric, like, oh no, it's not a failure. I'm refining. I'm, learning and all that sort of stuff. But actually, when I sat with it, I realized, even though I would tell you that I have no problem with failure and I see it as refinement, what I actually realized was there was a resistance to the feeling of failure in my body. It was almost like
Mm,
I could talk it and I could say it, but it was like I had failure over sitting over here, and I just couldn't really feel the experience, like engage in the experience of that possibility, put it that way, that
mm,
possibility. And when I started to really look at that, I realized as a child, one of my strategies for survival was to make sure that, I was the child that did everything right, that got good grades,
mm,
I was the people pleaser, so that my parents could be proud, which ensured that I was loved and safe and accepted. And that was my strategy. And upon talking a little bit more about that, I realized, just how that had really flowed into my capacity to fully engage with my life. So, while there's a part of me that I'm not willing to feel, doesn't necessarily mean that I have to experience that in reality. But if I'm not willing to feel that, there's a part of me that's really not in the experience that I'm having.
mm,
And I looked back as a child and I realized that my behavior was to not engage in certain things. Like, I can remember,
mm,
all of us going water skiing as a teenager, but I was so scared of embarrassing myself or not doing it perfectly and not doing it
mm,
right that I wasn't even willing to have a go. And I know that as a, even as a young child, I had that a lot where I wouldn't engage in sports, for example, because I didn't feel confident. So I wouldn't put myself in there because I wasn't willing to feel
Mm,
that experience of maybe not being as good as what I wanted to be.
mm,
And so this weekend really highlighted that for me. It really highlighted that, and I could feel it. I could feel it like this. I hadn't yet been willing and open to whatever life was going to bring me, whatever experience. Like I was trying to process it in my head, but I still
mhm,
hadn't engaged in that feeling, the feeling of maybe, you know, the possibility that this is a failure. Like just feel it, just experience it. It
mm,
doesn't
mm,
mean anything. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be a failure. It
mm.
just means that I'm willing to feel that as part of my experience. And all these years I had never noticed that.
It's like as if you're trying to protect yourself or cocoon yourself from, yeah, from that feeling, and you just it really highlights of how much, how much we could be doing in the world if you put ourselves into that uncomfortable, into discomfort,
Mm,
like if we can move past that, if we can get used to that as a practice of like I want to do something. And it's a choice really, because when I look back, I can see the same. There was a lot of times where I maybe just had friends that I maybe when I look at it actually, when it was friends that I didn't know and that I didn't feel comfortable with, maybe I would sit out and I wouldn't join in. But if there was actually friends that I did know and I was comfortable with, and that I knew that they liked me or whatever, I would join in and I would really enjoy it, that
mm,
kind of way. But it was
mm,
like trying to when you're moving into a new set of people, or out of your comfort zone in your I suppose because I grew up in a village where I'm probably used to knowing everyone and feeling comfortable and then being comfortable doing things in that environment, but then moving into an environment that you don't know anyone takes me longer, because I have to build up, I have to kind of feel like there's trust there, and then I
mm,
can kind of come out of myself kind of thing a little bit more, but it's funny how if you don't, yeah, it is a real barrier, isn't it, to
mm.
doing the things that you really want to do, and it's
Yeah.
unseen, like this unseen thing that if you don't realize is actually blocking you from your potential.
Mm. And the thing is that once again, I've seen this and I've seen this before, but I was reminded again how I can think that I'm okay with something. I can
Mm,
think that, I'm willing to experience certain things, or I can think I'm okay with a certain feeling. But am I willing to feel it? Am I willing to feel the experience of that? Because
yeah.
that's something like that. My willingness to feel failure as a result of my childhood, like that belief or that strategy that I developed, my willingness to feel a sense of failure was like
Mm,
zero. I refused to even consider feeling it, which
yeah.
means that I'm blocking off a whole lot of my life. I'm blocking off
Mm,
a whole lot of experience because there's a lot of things that I won't try if there's a part of me that believes I'm going to fail too. So,
yes.
yeah, it really just was such an interesting, like something, but then you get to know it like another aspect of it. And for me, it was just like, wow, like that. So how I'm going to deal with that now? Because I think now that I've realized that, it's like that really assuring myself, like coming in and being aware of this pattern, and
Mm,
also assuring myself that that's okay if that happens. I'm willing to feel it, like being open to that feeling experience of whatever happens. And if there's failure, if there's not good enough, if there's imperfection,
mm,
just really practicing being really open to that and to allowing and having that conscious awareness around not blocking that out.
yeah,
That's going to be sort of my way forward, I think. And also, my work with the inner child, and like just being aware of where that came from, and paying attention to that a little bit. I'll do some writing on it, and obviously sharing it has really helped me as well.
yeah. It's like a muscle though, I think those things that, once you've realized it, and you know that there's an anxiety around that, there's a fear of going into that uncomfortable place, but then when you actually do it and you overcome it, then it's like as if it dissolves it, and
Mm.
when you keep doing that a few times, it's like as if that becomes okay, you're not worried, you overcome that fear, the kind of thing. So
Mm,
it's like as if the pattern is starts to be dissolved, in your system. So then you can kind of, or even having strategies to, because like for myself, I think I definitely suffered from anxiety about doing things. Because like I talked about here before about being shy, but always having this fire and I wanted to do it. There's so much I wanted to do. So it's like, what can I do? So I had to kind of find strategies like, okay, Caroline, you're feeling fear here, this is really uncomfortable, but you have to find strategies like the breathing techniques or like just staying with it and moving yourself into that uncomfortable place and feeling like, exposed and vulnerable. Like that's what it is really, isn't it? Like there's no safety net there for you. Like, you have to move into a place where you just don't feel secure
that's
because you're putting
exactly
yourself
right.
out on a limb. It's like in relationships, like that's
Mm,
what you have to do as well. If you want to have relationships, you have to become vulnerable. If not,
mm,
you don't get the rewards. Like, so the rewards are like you get to do what you want to do, you get to have the
yeah,
relationship you want to have, like, so you have to open yourself up to being vulnerable and to being rejected and to be
yeah.
to failing,
Mm.
which is
And that's like
yeah,
a state, isn't it? Like for me, it's
yeah.
like as we're talking about this, like I can feel it. It's like I'm willing, I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to feel
Mm,
failure, and it's something that I just never considered. Like I just wouldn't. It wouldn't be in my reality. It's just like I will not. I just don't see that. I see success, right? Which is
yeah,
great. Like it's
yeah, it
great.
is.
There's
Yeah.
positive thinking, and that's all wonderful. But I can certainly see how the vulnerability of being willing to fail, doing what I love doing, actually takes me to another level in my life
Mhm.
because there's more of me is here. There's not a part of me that's being blocked off. Do you know? Like I can just sort of feel it. I can't. I don't even know that I'm finding the right words to explain this, but that's what it
Yeah,
feels like to me. It's like that the
yeah.
vulnerability that comes that I'm willing to actually stuff this up. I'm willing to get up there and have a go and find out that I was a complete failure.
Yeah,
Whereas
and
I wasn't so
it's
willing
fun.
to do that before.
It was like when you try anything, because like I was thinking that when I went on the first StreamYard first, I had been doing lives, I had been doing videos like Zoom interviews and recording them, and then had been recording poetry readings and stuff. And then I was asked to go on a live, and I was like, it's going to live, and I started like, really freaking out. So I had to go up and down, go on a big walk, and I had to walk myself up and give myself a talking to. So you're actually doing this now, and it's going to be fine. But I had a block around going live for some reason. So then when I went live, it was the very same. The fear was in my head. It was all the thoughts about, I don't know what it was, but it was a fear of just maybe like again a failure of stuffing it up or doing something wrong, and it turned out grand, it turned out great. And then I was on a mental health ward, and they actually asked me to come on and be on the team live on the actual show then. And every time I went on, then they asked me to do something else. So even though when I look back, like it wasn't very professional and probably still not very professional, but there was something that, you just learn as you do. And that's what I do. I always was like, I learn as I go, that kind of
Yeah,
way. And you
yeah,
have to be okay with getting it wrong and then seeing your progress, kind of thing.
yeah,
Because,
yeah,
you can't come in and be masterful at something without practice. It's like playing an instrument, you have to practice, like your piano, you're great at piano. So, how did you learn the piano? Through practice and, you know,
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so true, and I think levels of vulnerability, right? Because there's like I'll put myself out there and do anything, like I'll
Mhm.
jump up on stage and I feel quite comfortable with that. But yeah, I think there's like the more that we get in touch with, like and we can only look at what life brings back to us, what's coming back at us, and allow that to inform us. Do we need to be more vulnerable in this situation? Do we need to look a little bit deeper? Do we need to look if
Mm.
maybe we're not experiencing all of what we want to experience because there's something in us that hasn't really quite fully stepped into
Mm.
the complete authentic state, or and that's sort of how it feels to me. It's like there was a place I hadn't stepped into because I wasn't willing
Mm.
to experience the feeling of that. I was willing to like think about it and go, oh yeah,
Yes.
I'm fine with that,
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? So I sort of feel like that my experience now can be more expanded because there's a part
Yeah.
of me or there's an experience that I'm willing to embrace as part of life, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it's so subtle sometimes the emotional shifts that we have, you know,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
definitely it was the difference between being all in it, you know. Now with that
Yes.
realization, I feel like I'll be more all in it, you know, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's trying to, suppose, stay present, isn't it, when you're being triggered, you know? So it's kind of
Mm,
like, because you get this, I'm freaking out here, you know, and then it's like the practice of come back to presence, because you know your mind starts telling you 101 different things, stories, you know,
mm,
that aren't so good. And then, but if you in practice of coming back into the present moment and breathing and back into your body and you know, like calming yourself down, you know, and it's okay, like everything's okay, kind of thing, reassuring yourself is the only thing to do, and it's the only thing that I've ever done. I don't know, it's the only thing that really works, because if not,
mm,
you know, you're not, I suppose you're in the past or in the future, you're kind of projecting yourself, or, you know, so yeah, it's just, it's been, it's like midwifing yourself through an uncomfortable moment, you know,
yeah.
experience, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, and parenting,
Yeah,
like reparenting yourself or
yeah,
parenting the part of
yeah,
you that's having a
yes,
feeling so that you
absolutely,
can
yeah,
learn from the experience, so that you actually
yeah,
have the conscious awareness to take from what's happening and embody the experience. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
that's I think is one of the greatest gifts if we can have that conscious awareness because we're
yeah,
using what's happening to us to evolve and
yeah.
be more present next time.
And grow, and grow,
Mm,
because
yeah,
you can grow larger then. If not, you'll always stay the same size, you know? If you want to
yeah,
grow yourself, you need to move into that uncomfortable, into discomfort, you know, and then get comfortable in that in discomfort, and then you're like, "Oh, you know, this is normal for me now." And then, you know, the will wants to go on again and do more, and then you have to do the same thing again, you know? Put yourself into discomfort to grow, you know? So it's just that feeling all the time when you're kind of, when you're not uncomfortable, you're kind of not really growing.
yeah.
So
It's true.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah,
Okay.
we get the little plateaus of feeling, you know, not challenged for a little while, and then it's time to go again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true, and life
And then
just pushes you, doesn't it? It just presents these opportunities if you're looking
yes,
for them.
that's it.
Otherwise, you can just not look for them and just be upset or be whatever about your
Yes.
life. But it's like if you're looking, if you're letting life inform you in every moment, I think it's yeah, it's a good way to live.
Yeah, yeah. Exciting anyway, isn't
Mm.
it?
It is. It is
It's an adventure. Thanks,
an
Lisa,
adventure.
for sharing that, so new and vulnerable, I suppose, experience that you've just gone through with everybody, because it's great to get the process, and it's the same thing no matter what happens. It's
Mm.
just that uncomfortable feeling, isn't it? You know,
It
we
is,
all
and I
know
think it's
that feeling.
good
Like,
to share. Good
yeah,
to share, you know, the stories because I think it makes more sense. It's harder to it's easier to take things in, you know, when you hear about somebody's personal experience and how they work through it, and
mhm,
especially with feelings, it's very hard to sometimes understand a concept unless it's put into a practical real life situation. So
yeah, yeah.
you're welcome.
Great. Thanks so much, and thank you everybody for watching. And we'll be back on Wednesday with another trying to answer another question.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
thank you
Have a
so much.
beautiful
Thank you,
week.
Lisa.
Thanks,
Take care.
Caroline.
See you Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.